Yes, indeed, it is a big subject. It's been on for a while, and who knows how long more. We've got two gentlemen, as you may have seen there, joining us to weigh in on the matter this morning. We've got Mr. Michael Jaffor, former director with the SSS, as well as Dr. Obadiah Melafia, who is a member steering committee and constitution drafting committee of the NTF, as well as his other designations as an economist and former deputy governor of the CBN. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Jofo. Security, of course, is a big subject, but having seen the trajectory, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, there are those who they just can't place a finger on why we are not able to address this matter. But given the latest submissions and incidents surrounding the Benue state governor, does this introduce, some may think this might just be a dangerous trajectory if not nipped in the bud, as he has outlined in that brief to State House correspondents. What are your immediate thoughts about what he said?
Well, I think the governor was absolutely right in his assessment. Even though this is not their first attack on any sitting governor. You remember that the governor of Borno State, Zulu, has been attacked severally. But this one is peculiar because it has some ethnic coloration. The claims the governor has made that he even received intelligence before the attack, that this attack was going to take place, and eventually took place. Thank God he escaped unhurt, and if anything more dastardly had happened to him, maybe we wouldn't be saying what we are saying now. This is a very big embarrassment, and it calls for proper investigation by the security agency. I'm happy too. The Inspector General of Police has ordered high-powered investigation from the force CID. The SSS is there to doing their own investigation, and we believe with time the truth will come out. But this is a very dangerous development.
You know, Mr. Joffor, right there is what some people find difficult to internalize, where something happens, then there has to be this order before, who knows, before investigation is carried out, or is it just for political correctness? But if you could shed some light on how does it work in security circles? How is it that, yesterday we were talking about these insurgents, how they carry out their attacks, have they been operating for a while now? They seem to be a lot more precise. They do what they do. They carry people hundreds and 200s, 300s, move miles. They're not intercepted. One then wonders, the intelligence community, how does that work? Is it that they get this intelligence, they pass it on, or they fail with intelligence? Because so many people just can't understand how this is so difficult to address.
Yeah, without shifting blames, I've said this several times. Intelligence may be provided, and on one hand, it might be underestimated or improperly handled. These are similar cases, and that's what we have, where we'll have what we call intelligence failure. Perhaps we provide intelligence that is not acted upon properly or is mishandled. But that's like I said, we're not shifting blames. The most important thing is that we must concentrate efforts to ensure that this thing comes to an end, especially attacking, just like the governor rightly pointed out. An attack on a governor is an attack on the entire state, the entire people of Benue State. And since they have also all sworn to the oath to keep this country safe, it is their responsibility. And the responsibility of the people. We cannot be calling the security agencies alone. I believe that the citizens have responsibility, the major roles to play in providing information. These people don't operate from the past. They don't operate from the moon. They live with people. And it's shocking, too, when I heard that some fishermen, without prejudice to the outcome of the investigation, when I read in the papers that some fishermen have been arrested, whether it's a social media story or not, we should not trivialize this type of situation that is very, very grievous. We must accord it the necessary priority. And like you said, we look at our security agencies. Security agencies, they don't operate in a vacuum. It's part of the Nigerian society. The rod is still there. We are not importing our security agents, our agencies from outside the country. They are Nigerian. There is corruption in the process, just like you said, in purchase of arms, and you've had what has been happening with it. So, with all this, we have series of challenges, and I call on the National Assembly to perform its oversight function without compromise, because, in fact, you see that the National Assembly members, in the course of their oversight function, they are also corrupt practices while carrying out their oversight. So, like Mr. President sometimes said that if we don't kill corruption, corruption will kill us. Security is the primary responsibility of government. And without security, there won't be any meaningful development. So we must accord priority to our security to ensure that people are free to carry out their legitimate business.
Afia, did you see this coming?
Well, I'm not a prophet, so I never see anything coming, even though people might arrogate to me that quality. I'm just a humble social scientist and an economic expert. But let me just say that this attempt on the life of an executive governor, an incumbent of a state, like my colleague just said, is an attempted attack on the entire people of the state. So those who are trying to do this wicked thing need to understand the implication of what they are trying to do. Here we have a statesman who has served this country right from local government up to ministerial, and then as executive governor of his state, he has paid his dues. He's been a big-time farmer since his youth and chose to go to his farm. And like he said, if a governor of a state cannot feel safe to go to his farm, how will the ordinary Benue people feel in going to their farms? So this is a very bad precedent. It's a very evil precedent. Well, the circumstances in Borno are totally different. Borno is a war zone. We've been living with this evil people for quite a while. But what happened in Benue is totally evil. It is totally diabolical, and it opens a new dimension. And like Wike said, they don't know what they are trying. This could affect the whole of the country, because there's no way Benue people and the people of the Middle Belt, let me emphasize, the people of the Middle Belt will ever accept this attempt on the life of one of their sons. Let this be very, very clear. Nobody's afraid of these people. It is just that some people are being given arms and allowed to move freely with these arms, while the little dang guns and machetes that ordinary people have are being dispossessed from them. They are not even allowed to defend and protect their homes and their families. So this is the dimension of the whole thing, but we are glad that God spared the life of His Excellency Governor Tom. He will live a very long life, and I believe that God is not done with him yet in terms of responsibility and leadership. And as long as God allows, he will continue to serve his people, and he will continue to serve this country. We are very pained by it. We are very alarmed by it. But we know that God is the protector of the just. But let these people know that nobody is afraid of them. Nobody. We shall never be cowed. One group has claimed responsibility. We saw it in the papers, in social media being moved around. We don't go by rumors, but who are we to contradict them? And I'm a bit suspicious about fishermen, Jukum fishermen for that matter. What would Jukum fishermen have to do with the governor of Benue State? I find that childish, and I find that very dubious. In any case, no fisherman who attempted such a dastardly evil will stick around and wait to be caught. This is very unlikely, and it borders on the very childish. And there's a lot of childishness around.
You know, there was a time, in fact, time and again, you have said that there are certain powers, world powers, that want to destroy this country. And you quoted a certain shipment of weapons from Turkey at some other time from Iran. So asking if you saw this coming is, basically as a result of that. But you have spoken about certain people, and you certainly think something cynical is ongoing here. But for a lot of Nigerians seeing this, there's a lot happening, and it's hard to, follow the thread, piece things together, and maybe think where this might be going to. So really, for you, you seem to have at least information more than the average Nigerian. What is the implication of this? Where is all this going to? Because it seems like a lot of things are happening at the same time. So where is this leading to?
Now, look, I'm not exceptional. Every Nigerian is affected. In fact, some of the worst affected are from the state of the governor himself. Killing of women and children. They call it banditry. And I think those who use the term bandit also have a big problem. In fact, I find that using the word banditry is like really trying to rationalize away what is existential evil in itself. They are not bandits. A bandit is an agbero, the kind you find, the touts you find in our motor parks, in Agege, in all the motor parks of the country. Those are bandits. They are trying to swindle you of a little naira here and there. They might carry a small knife in their pocket. These are what you call bandits. But when a man carries AK-47, AK-49, he has rocket launchers, he can kidnap hundreds of school kids, and you call him a bandit, then you have a problem yourself. They're not bandits. That is the official line, and it is very dangerous because failure to call evil by its name is itself evil. I was not totally surprised because there's so much happening in this country. There's almost near collapse. And those of us who speak out are not troublemakers, for heaven's sakes. My name is Mailafia. I am a man of peace. I love peace and I cherish it. But when you have a societal breakdown bordering on anomie, bordering on complete lawlessness, and you see the people in government don't understand that government simply means that institution that monopolizes the use of legitimate violence. But when you have competing centers of power that are using violence and you tolerate them, some people would even say there are some people who actually give them these arms and give them money. And this is a big business. This capture and pay ransom, it's a big business. So when you do that as a government, you don't know what you're doing. You are harming yourself very badly because you are undermining the moral ontology of your own existence as a government and as an authority. When you allow that and even encourage it tacitly, This is what you're doing. And eventually, the system will collapse. This is what happens in all societies. Nigeria cannot be an exception. So please, my advice is that all of us must re-examine ourselves.
Right.
Let us re-examine our conscience and retrace our steps before we lose this country entirely.
You know, we'll come to some of the work, that the NC Front is doing regarding the Constitution and questions as to how this might address what we're seeing currently. But let me take this back to Mr. Ejiofor, because I seem to see a thread in both of your submissions. So, Mr. Ejiofor, earlier on, you said that this attack is different from what we've seen with the governor of Borno State, that this one on the governor of Benue State has some ethnic dimension to it. And Dr. Melafia seems to believe that the government is tolerating certain people who are using violence. So does this make this harder, really, for government to tackle, saying that there's some ethnic coloration to it? And do you think that the government is indeed tolerating certain groups, certain people, at the expense of others?
Well, I wouldn't say that government is tolerating that kind of attitude, but the action or inaction of government would tend to suggest that, even if it's not intended. I'll give you an example. There are some groups that the government will call hard on, and some groups they don't even care. Igodo or whatever it's called, the Southwest made a statement on the Yorubas living and living Nigeria, which of course is not the general viewpoint of the whole Yoruba nation, just like you have IPOB. IPOB does not, in fact, represent the interests of all Igbos. They represent their interests. Because if you carry out a referendum, you'll be shocked to know that not all Igbos or Yorubas support secession. But when the chief of army staff, who are just coming, will come to say that he's coming to visit Igbo for making a statement, and whereas others are being killed, no action seems to be taken. Tuna has made a statement claiming responsibility, whether it is true or not. I expected that government should have also condemned such a statement, that this is very wrong. So when I say inaction or action of government tends to promote this, some people will read meaning to it. That might not be the intention. But if you do that, people will read meanings to it that this group will do this and government will not say anything. But when another group says it, then the government will come heavily on them. That reminds me of the saying of Senator Sani in the National Assembly then, that people are treated with insecticide while others are treated with deodorant. So all such situations, government should come out with position, treat everybody equally, fairly, and justly, and there won't be problem. And that is what is exactly promoting these problems, these security challenges we're having in the country, because they feel that people are not on the same, treated on the same table, on the same level. And as long as we continue to do that, we'll continue to have a series of challenges.
All right, Mr. Ejiofor, a question arises in my mind when you recall what Dr. Melafia said a little while ago when he said, well, there are rumors, according to him, that some people have taken responsibility for the attack on the governor of Benue State. So speaking from a security perspective, from an intelligence perspective, what should we be doing with that kind of claim? And secondly, are we to say we're unaware of the people who carried out the attack?
Well, for now, it's unclear who carried out the attack, because Mietiala statement did not even help matters. They came out to say that it was supporters of the governor that attacked him. That doesn't make any sense. And Funam, whether it is correct or not, claiming responsibility, and government is not doing anything. But I believe that for now, investigations are on, both from the police, the state security service, to establish the people behind this.
Okay, hopefully we'll be able to get that back. But let me flip this to Dr. Melafia. Most of the time, Dr. Melafia, security concerns spike during elections. And they seem to taper down a little in the following years. But every time there is an election, no matter how small the nature of the election, you find out that there will be a spike of security interests in all of the areas. Now, I'm just wondering, trying to play this in my head, how much of this whole security hiatus we find ourselves is political? Because on the one hand, of course, everyone is saying we shouldn't politicize what happened to the governor of Benue State. And then you also hear in the northern elders saying on the front pages of the papers yesterday that there is an attempt to weaken the north as a result of the insecurity all over the place. And then there are those who are talking about, insecurity, frustrating anything elections during the 2023 elections that is still 2 years away. So the question that I would want to put to you is, do we even do anything are we doing anything? Are we even thinking about anything to abate, to minimize, to reduce, or to frustrate any attempt at insecurity in any way, manner, shape, or form?
Well, the government might want to do certain things.
No, sorry, that's for Dr. Melafia, Mr. Ejiofor. I'll come back to you.
Okay, all right.
It's okay. He's the security expert. But from my own humble point of view,
I'm looking at it from the political angle now.
Sure,
Electoral, violence is still, something that is always a major concern during the elections, no matter how small the election is. We saw what happened recently in Ekiti State. And it seems to be the same trend at every election time. And after elections, it's no longer, electoral violence is not a security concern. There are other security concerns.
Well, I don't really think so. In the first place, nobody has carried out any econometric studies to verify that statistical claim that there tends to be more rise in security concerns. I mean, concerns from whose point of view? From the point of view of the people in power, or from the point of view of ordinary masses? That's number one. And there's such thing as perception. Perception is not necessarily reality. And then secondly, correlation is not the same as causation, that the coming of an election or the prospects of elections cause a rise. It might just be a mere coincidence or mere correlation. But honestly, if you ask me, I really don't think that is really, really the issue. There would be local tensions as to be expected, but I don't think there is a causative relationship. I don't think so. The problems are far deeper. Number one, there is a crisis of legitimacy. There's a feeling that the government that we democratically elected is no longer with the people. That there are hidden agendas, and that there is a kind of a global, situation to gradually undermine Nigeria. You did make reference to what I said, in some of my columns, and that is a fact. I believe that there is a global conspiracy, and I'm not a believer in conspiracy theories per se, but anybody who has studied classical European diplomacy from ancient times through Napoleon Bonaparte to the Congress of Vienna to the Treaty of Rome, who's claimed that there are no such thing as conspiracies, might either be a god or he is a fool. There are global conspiracies.
Well, Dr. Malafia, the issues you
Yes.
have raised there, right here, right now,
let me
are
finish.
not
Let me
issues
finish.
to play
The
with
point,
or joke
the
around
point.
with.
No,
You have
no.
said that
The
there are
point
deeper
oh,
issues.
goodness
You've
me.
mentioned one.
No. Let
It'll
me
be
make
good
the
to
point,
explore
sir.
some of them, but when we return from this break. Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Malafia, you began with the fact that there are deeper issues. And the first, of course, you mentioned was that the government is struggling with legitimacy. But that's not new, really, because over the years, trust deficit between the governed and the government has depreciated gradually. And it just seems to have come this far, so far. So some might say that is not a new thing, really, or is it?
Oh, no, not at all. This is totally unprecedented. This is the worst time ever in the history of Nigeria. Ask anybody. You can't even compare with Abacha's times. Abacha's times was a golden era compared to what is happening. You think Abacha would have tolerated all this? You can't travel on these roads. Killings everywhere, destruction everywhere. I was trying to make the point that world powers want to destroy Nigeria. And what they've done is to come and meet some people and tell them, yes, you were born to rule. You have there's an agenda of, Obasanjo called it of Fulanization, and enforcement of one particular religion against the rest. The world powers encourage them and tell them, look, we're behind you, go ahead. They provide the weapons, and some local elites buy into that idea. And they begin a campaign of genocide, because this is what it is. If you carry heavy weapons unchecked, you go into the forest, you go into the ancient savannah, you kill people, you rape women, you kill children. What are you? You are committing genocide against an unarmed and defenseless people. And let me make this point clear. Under our Constitution, under our laws, and by the precepts of international law, global ethics, natural justice, and equity, the people who are about to die have a right to defend themselves. So they would be wise not to go after Igboho. You should leave that man alone. He's a hero of his people.
When you say world powers, can you hear
Yes.
me? When you say
Yes.
world powers, there are some interests, foreign interests, trying to destabilize Nigeria. Are you saying that Nigeria's government is in agreement with them? Are you saying the government of Nigeria is in connivance with these world powers to destroy Nigeria?
I didn't say the government. I said some of our elites. There is no doubt about it. Some of our
there's a
elites
government
have an
in
agenda.
place to checkmate that kind of
Yes.
activity.
And well, but they are not doing it because some of the elites who operate there believe that they have an agenda of Fulanization that they must carry out in the country.
Is
So
the
we have
government
created
unaware of what you're saying?
We've created a cattle republic. The poet Odia Ofemun gave the Awolowo lectures 2 weeks ago, and he said we've created a cattle republic. That is what it is. It's a Fulani cattle republic. There is an agenda. This agenda was sold to them by world powers who believe they know our fault lines and they know which buttons to press to destroy countries. So they've sold them this dummy. They've bought it. They've run away with it. But of course, they don't have the intelligence to know that they are destroying themselves and they are destroying our country. And when they talk about the North, there's no such thing as the North. The North no longer exists.
Right. Let me take you to
the past.
Okay, Dr. Malafia, let me take you to Mr. Jofo. Mr. Jofo, I mean, even we should take a look at today's Vanguard, the front page, which we did review. The heading was Southwest Frustration Driving Calls for Secession. And that was ascribed to Fayemi, governor of Ekiti State. So you have different schools of thoughts, different interpretation that different groups have internalized about what they think is going on. But a lot, also depends on security agencies, how they handle these kind of matters. So to what extent can we look to them and say, look, your action or inaction perhaps is fueling some of these matters? Because, yes, we know politicians in some cases are chief executive, but how do we juxtapose the role of security agencies to bridge this gap?
Yeah, you see, just like Dr. Mailafia, my very good friend, said, you see, the problem is caused by elites. And like the earlier question to Mailafia, 80% of our security challenges are politically generated. If he did ask why the spike towards election, the spike of violence, although Dr. Mailafia disagree with that because there's no data, but available evidence also indicate that there is always a spike towards election. And the reasons are obvious. Because of the legitimacy or illegitimacy of emerging government, which did not come from the people. If we have an electoral process that the people, credible people will emerge from, wouldn't be having these problems. Because politics is about service. Politics you have to be alive to serve the people. You have to be alive to be served. But what we have, because our electoral process is not sanitized, people will do everything in their power to shoot themselves to power and ask you to go to court. And our judicial process is not even helping matters. So what we need to do now is to ensure that our electoral process is sanitized, especially this issue of electronic voting. We can't shut down our economy because we are doing an election. I agree entirely with Dr. Fayemi that frustration is pushing a lot of people. We have a lot of agitation. We have the IPOP from the Southeast, setting up the Eastern Security Network. We have the Southwest pushing for Amotekun and other groups emerging. In the North, it's the same thing. Like Dr. Mailafia said, there's nothing like the North again. We should be talking about Nigeria. Nigeria belongs to all of us. So we must put Nigeria first before any other thing. But our politicians have refused to acknowledge the nationhood of this country.
Right.
Yes.
There are different levels to this, Mr. Ejiofor. So there's the talk about politicians, elites, and their role in this. And there's a talk about security agencies, which, you used to be an intelligence officer, so you understand how these things work. And interestingly, you narrated your deal in the hands of kidnappers. I think it was in 2017 or thereabouts. And lest we forget, there are still students who are in captivity as we speak this morning, who are abducted in Kaduna State. So that's another angle to this. But specifically about security, I remember then, that was as far back as 2017, you called for a re-examination of our security. And you just said at the end that, Nigerians should pray and, rely on prayers, watch their movement. But, we have security operatives, we have security agencies, we have intelligence. So 2017, you called for a re-examination. Have we been able to re-examine it well enough? Which areas do we need to still tweak?
We have not, actually. I made that suggestion based on my findings from my own experience. In every situation, you have, in every 12, like you said, you have a Judas. Among our security agencies, there are people who operate with them. And that's why they say that our security agencies, especially the military and the police, who have the larger number and outreach to the people, should examine, look at the conduct of their personnel who are involved in all this. But I don't think that has been done. You remember Wadune's case, how a police officer was killed by the military just to cover up. There are so many instances. So you cannot lay the blame completely on the security agency, but they have responsibility to discharge, and they must look inwards, vet their personnel. We have what is called in the State Security Service, for instance, what we call continuous vetting. That's looking at your background. Are you living above your means? Are you living within your means? If you are living above your means, what's responsible for it? Some armorers even sell arms. This has been confirmed. Some of the arms recovered are from the military. So how do you explain it? And we are fighting this we are fighting enemy within. So that's the problem. We need to re-examine. Like I said, in my own experience when I was kidnapped, 4 of the people, I'm not saying I'm making a guess, 4 of the 12 people that were involved were serving soldiers. I am not a small boy. I think I should be able to decipher, even from your discussion. It got to a point, I was told that they should do all this because their pass will expire. So what evidence do I need to confirm that these are serving military personnel?
So in other words, Mr. Joffo, now from that standpoint, because there's been several other cases, I think I remember the one in Akwa Ibom State where there's even a court decision which did indict some 7 police officers who were involved in a similar matter. So who do we blame in that respect? Because it does appear as though there's something going on even within the intelligence agencies for some of these failings to happen.
Everybody will take the blame. But most importantly, the leadership of the military or the security agency who have failed to identify the bad eggs within the security agencies. They should be able to do that. So, but people, the citizens, to have a right to look at the conduct of the security agencies. Look at what is happening on the road. You don't travel on the road. You are afraid of armed robbers. You are afraid of kidnappers. You are afraid of police, even on the road. As we speak, I thought that with the end of NSAS, with the demonstration of NSAS, that police must have learned its lesson but travel between, I've been saying this like sounding like a broken record. Travel between Okene and Auchi till tomorrow. You have over 15 checkpoints. What are they doing? They are there extorting money. And even within there, you still have kidnap taking place. So we need to do some conscious examination within the various agencies. It's very important.
Okay. Now, speaking of solutions, Mr. Joffo, you've proffered some. So let me take this back to Dr. May Lafia, because you are a member of the Steering Committee and Constitution Drafting Committee of the NC Front. And I mean, there's been a lot of talk around the Constitution, how it handles issues around the economy, which is closely tied to the security which we're discussing. And I recall something caught my attention from what the governor of Benue State said yesterday at the State House. He said that this issue of security is not about the president or we state governors. He said that they are about every citizen of this country. And for me as a citizen, I asked myself, what more can I do? I mean, what more haven't I done? So regarding the work you're doing at the NC front, how this will impact on security and how fast it can impact on security, just what are the alternatives really?
Well, the NC front is a group of people who are very concerned about the situation of the country. They are patriots. They believe that they will need to save the country. So it's a dialogue group. And they've decided to launch a constitutional project, of which I'm a member. Our key concerns are, number one, the need to decentralize our structure. The structure is too centralized, with overwhelming power concentrated in the north. We need to decentralize the system, give more autonomy to the regions, and that of course includes, creating a regional police rather than centralizing the police. This is unwieldy, and of course, it has proven to be disastrous. So those issues need to be looked into. Autonomy, if you prefer the word restructuring, you can call it that, or re-engineering, which is a term I prefer. I don't like to scare people. So if the term restructuring scares people, then re-engineering the federation in order to make it work, in order to unleash, prosperity, create jobs, and empower ordinary people. That is the way to go. And everybody must take responsibility. I have spoken and I have said that this is the worst government we've ever had in this country, by far the worst since 1960. But I will still say that the failure of this government is our collective failure, in a sense that we have tolerated this nonsense for too long. We've accepted it. And so we also must take moral responsibility. But if you're a leader, the buck stops with you. You cannot offer excuses. We are all leaders in various ways. Even in your community, you are a leader. Wherever you're in the church, in the community, we are all leaders. So we must take responsibility at whatever level we find ourselves.
All right, so
we should do away with this.
In other words,
we should do away with fear.
Okay, pardon me, but we need to anchor at this point, but I'm sure subsequently we will look at specifics, what individuals can do in whatever space, wherever they find themselves, to make their own contribution to ensure that it all gets better. But I want to thank both of you, Dr. Obadiah Melafia, member, Steering Committee and Constitution Drafting Committee of the NC Front. We've also had Mr. Mike Ejiofor, former director with the SSS. Thank you, gentlemen, for talking to us today. Well, we will continue in a similar light in terms of solutions. What do we do? What is being done elsewhere to see, we bring something to bear here to achieve results? It's been done before. We're not reinventing the wheel. We'll talk about that when we return. Stay with us.